The sun was folding itself into the horizon, spilling amber light over the dusty plains where silence was louder than wind. The cowboy, Eli Danner, had spent 12 years on that land, and not once had he felt the weight of his own voice until tonight. His cabin stood half a mile from the river, a place where only coyotes dared break the night. He was used to solitude. It fit him like an old leather coat, worn, cracked, and too stubborn to throw away. But as the shadows stretched, something shifted. He heard the slow creak of wagon wheels. Then came a figure, taller than any woman he'd seen, framed by sunset like a statue of the West itself. Her name was Mara Vale, the woman they called the Giant Bride. She wasn't a legend or a myth. She was flesh and heart, 6 feet of quiet grace and eyes that carried storms. When she stepped down from the wagon, dust rose to meet her boots, like the ground itself bowed in respect. The men at the post had laughed earlier, whispering that no man could stand beside her without looking small. Eli didn't laugh. He saw something in her walk, a loneliness that matched his own. Mara's voice broke the quiet. "You're Eli Danner, aren't you?" He nodded, leaning on the fence rail, the wood rough beneath his hand. "That's what they call me. I was told you need help running this place." He studied her, broad shoulders under a pale shawl, face touched by road dust but eyes steady. "Searching? You sure you can handle it?" he asked, his tone steady but not cold. She smiled faintly. "Try me." They worked in silence as twilight fell, her long strides moving through the corral, lifting hay bales as if they weighed nothing. Eli watched, half in awe, half in disbelief. There was strength in her arms. Yes, but something softer too. When she brushed back her hair, the dying light caught the edge of her jaw, and for a fleeting second he forgot to breathe. Night came with thunder murmuring far away. Rain began to scent the air, and Mara turned toward the cabin porch. "Storm's coming," she said. Eli followed, stepping up beside her. "You can stay inside. Roof don't leak much." Her laugh was quiet. "I've slept under worse." Inside, the cabin glowed with lamplight and the smell of pine. She stood there, her head nearly grazing the rafters, and he realized the world had given her size, but not a place to fit. She carried her height like a burden she never asked for. When she caught him looking, she asked softly, "Do I make you uneasy?" Eli shook his head. "No, just not used to seeing someone who looks like they belong in a story." Her lips curved faintly, then faded into something heavier. "Stories aren't kind to women like me," she whispered. "They make us giants so they can feel small." The rain came harder, a rhythm on the roof. Eli set a kettle on the stove. "Maybe you just haven't found the right story yet," he said. She turned, her voice steady but trembling somewhere deep inside. "Maybe this is it. Maybe tonight's the start." For a long moment, there was only the sound of rain, the hum of fire, and the ache of 2 souls who had lived too long without being seen. Then she stepped closer, close enough that the lamplight trembled on her skin. Her voice was barely above a breath. "Eli," she said, "I'll take it off." He froze, meeting her gaze, wide, brave, vulnerable. She smiled faintly, shaking her head before he could speak. "Not what you think. I mean the weight, the armor, the fear of being too much. Tonight is my first time. Not hiding who I am." Eli's throat tightened. The words caught somewhere between admiration and ache. "Then don't hide," he said quietly. "Not here." She let the shawl slide from her shoulders, revealing the woman beneath, not just her height, not her strength, but the truth of her. In that simple act, something shifted in the room. The storm outside softened, as if the sky itself bowed in quiet respect. Eli stepped forward, not touching, just standing close enough for the warmth between them to speak what neither dared to say. 2 strangers, 2 wanderers, both scarred by silence, finding for the first time that maybe the world wasn't too big if you had someone tall enough to stand beside you. The night stretched on, filled with thunder, unspoken words, and the rhythm of hope. Morning came slow over the valley, spilling pale gold through the cabin windows. The storm had rinsed the world clean. The earth smelled of rain and pine, and the sky was a blue so wide it could swallow sorrow. Eli woke first, boots still by the door, the faint scent of smoke clinging to his shirt. He looked toward the small cot near the hearth where Mara slept, her long frame curved beneath a wool blanket, peace softening the sharp lines of her face. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the ache of waking alone. He busied himself with the fire, quiet, careful not to wake her. But the boards creaked and her eyes opened, grey-green like stormwater catching morning light. She sat up slowly, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. "You didn't sleep," she murmured. Eli smiled faintly. "Didn't need to. Some nights are worth staying awake for." She studied him, unsure whether to laugh or look away. "You always talk like that." "Only when I mean it." Outside, mist drifted low across the pasture. A mare whinnied somewhere in the fog. Mara rose to her full height, stretching, and for a moment Eli just watched her silhouette against the window, strong, elegant, almost too real for the quiet world he'd built. Over coffee they spoke little. Words weren't needed. The rhythm of mugs on wood and the pop of the fire said enough. Yet underneath that calm, something pulsed, a question, a pull neither of them named. By noon they rode out to mend fences along the ridge. The sun baked the mud dry, and laughter came easier than either expected. When Mara swung a fallen post upright, Eli tried to steady it, his hand brushing hers. A jolt, like lightning in daylight, shot through both of them. She looked down, smiled shyly, and he said nothing, because words would only break what silence had built. Later, as they paused beneath the cottonwoods, Mara spoke first. "They used to say I'd never find a man tall enough to stand beside me." Eli chuckled, glancing up at her. "Guess they never met a cowboy who don't mind looking up once in a while." She laughed, low and honest. Then her gaze turned serious. "You ever think maybe folks like us were made wrong?" He shook his head. "No, ma'am. Just made different. World's small, but hearts can stretch it some." The wind picked up. Dust swirled around them like memory. She stepped closer. "You really believe that?" He met her eyes, steady, fearless. "I believe what I can see. And right now, I see something worth staying for." The words hung there, heavy as thunder. She didn't answer, but her hand lifted, resting lightly against his chest, testing the beat beneath. It was fast, human, real. That night, the horizon caught fire again, the sun melting behind red clouds. They stood outside the cabin, the air cooling around them. Mara's voice trembled just enough to betray the feeling beneath it. "Eli, I don't know what comes next." He turned toward her. "Then we make it up as we go." She smiled, half tear, half courage. "You make it sound simple." "It is," he said. "You just stay, and I'll keep the porch light on." She looked at the small cabin, then back at the open land, her old fears stretching thin under, the weight of something new, and for the first time she didn't feel too tall, too much, too strange. She felt seen. As stars began to bloom overhead, Eli leaned against the post, his voice low. "You know, some folks spend a lifetime searching for home. Maybe home's just where someone finally looks you in the eye and don't flinch." She breathed in slow. "Then maybe I've found mine." The crickets started their song. The lantern glowed in the window like a small sun refusing to die. In that quiet, words turned unnecessary again. The space between them held everything. Longing, promise, the fragile courage of starting over. And when the narrator's voice closes the scene, it whispers like wind across the plains. "Out here, love ain't about grand speeches. It's the soft decision to stay when you could ride away." If you believe in second chances under the western sky, saddle up with us, subscribe, and let the next story ride.